Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I can confirm that I enjoyed a meeting with the Secretary of State himself this morning discussing the crisis in the Welsh steel industry, so he was certainly available this morning for discussions. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House has considered Welsh affairs. It's a great honour to open this debate today, and I'm grateful to the Backbench Business Committee for allowing a St David's Day debate. This debate offers us the opportunity to speak about the challenges and opportunities affecting Wales, and I'm sure that members will wish to touch upon a wide range of different matters. But I want to open today's debate by concentrating on what I believe are some of the most salient political, cultural and economic matters facing our country and our people today. 2016 will be a momentous year for Wales. Firstly, we're on course for a championship-deciding clash with England in the Six Nations. I would, of course, remind the House that it's traditional for Wales to win the Six Nations after a World Cup. But perhaps the most momentous sporting occasion will be when their round ball counterparts make their debut in the European Championships in France this summer. It's been 58 years, Madam Speaker, since we've been in an international finals. That is far too long for a country that has produced footballing greats like Allchurch, Rush, Hughes, Giggs to be absent from major footballing tournaments. Together, stronger was the teams and the supporters' mantra through qualification, and it's a philosophy that can be applied across many of the issues I wish to speak about today. When Bale, Ashley Williams and Ramsey are flying the flag for Wales in that contest, campaigners from this House and across Wales will be making the case for Wales and the whole of the UK to remain in the European Union. We will do it with a special zeal. Wales is a net beneficiary of EU funding. Our membership of the European Union is vital to our economy, security and to our place in the world. A Brexit would be a massive gamble for Wales, putting jobs, investment, trade and therefore the safety of our communities at risk. The very last thing that we need now is the instability which the possibility of secession from the EU inflicts upon a country which already endures economic fragility and social disadvantage. I will give way.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way on that point. Would he accept the general library figure that the UK makes a net payment of around £8 to £8.5 billion each year into the European Union? That's a net payment. And that therefore, if that money were taken and barnetised and 5% of it were handed over to Wales, Wales would actually become a net beneficiary from exiting the European Union.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, but I'm afraid that he's confusing the budget of the European Union with the British economy. The British economy benefits to the tune of £227 billion a year in the exports that it makes to the European Union thanks to its membership of the single market. And so if you're looking for value for money, £9 billion to £227 billion looks like a pretty good deal to me. More immediately, Mr. Speaker, many share my concerns about the months between now and June the 23rd and ask whether it's realistic to expect rational decisions to be made around a cabinet table that is beset by mutual loathing. Hundreds of thousands of Welsh jobs are linked to EU membership, and it's our largest source of investment, bringing growth, quality employment and higher wages. Much of our global investment from outside the EU is made possible by the fact that inside the EU we provide a gateway to the single market. That is a major reason for international firms to locate in Wales, including Tata Steel in my constituency. As honourable and right honourable members will be aware, Mr. Speaker, the Welsh steel industry finds itself in a precarious position, and nowhere in Wales is this felt more acutely than in my constituency. The works in Port Talbot are the productive core of our local economy and community. So the announcement at the start of the year of 750 job losses was a bitter blow, which will of course be compounded as the impact starts to be felt through the supply chain and the wider local economy. While the steel crisis may be in part the result of global trends and events, what cannot be ignored is that the government has been asleep at the wheel for the last 5 years. Far more could and should have been done to give the British steel industry a fighting chance. from the blatantly unfair and distortive dumping of Chinese steel to the incompetent and complacent management of public procurement, this government has failed to give justified support or stimulus to steel. I will give way.
He's been very, very generous, sir. But can I just draw his mind back to the evidence we took from management and from the unions about those terrible job losses, and the fact that they both said that the European Union had delayed bringing in tariffs on Chinese rebar, and also they had taken a very long time to agree the compensation package, which the government had to ask permission from the EU for, in order to give back to companies like Tata some of the money which had already been taken in taxation as a result of energy taxes.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his intervention. What I would say is that membership of the European Union is defined by how you engage and how you work with partners in Brussels, both in the European Commission and the other member states. What we have is a government that recognised in 2011 that there should be an energy-intensive industries compensation package, but then failed to go and knock on the door in Brussels and make it happen. How can it be that it took 5 years to deliver that deal? And when it comes to the dumping of steel, the British government is the ringleader of a set of other member states that is not wanting to reform the anti-dumping rules so that we have the lesser duty rule, and is a cheerleader for China, lobbying for China to have market economy status. So I'm afraid we need to draw a line under this constant scapegoating of Brussels. The blame should be laid squarely at the door of number 10 Downing Street, number 11 Downing Street, and the rest of the cabinet. They have failed to engage in Brussels in a way that wins for British business, as so many other member states do, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is because the government operates in a fog of laissez-faire ideology. It prays to the gods of the free market and then it hopes for the best. But in reality, the market economy can only function effectively if it is regulated. Just as football requires the offside rule to ensure fair competition, so our steel industry requires the right regulatory framework so that it can trade in equitable conditions on a level playing field. Instead, the government's blithe faith in the free market is driving them to lobby for China to be given market economy status and to refuse to support the scrapping of the lesser duty rule. Madam Speaker, I wish to state now with utmost gravity that if speedy action is not taken to prevent the dumping of Chinese steel, we will witness the beginning of the end of UK steel making. The government know full well that this foundation industry is hanging by a thread. Neither free market dogma nor cozying up to Beijing should be allowed to impede their patriotic duty to emulate other EU countries and stand up for the men and women who are the backbone of the British economy. The Minister for Enterprise and the Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills recently visited my constituency, and I hope they will return so that they can go to the homes of some of my constituents who have lost their jobs. I hope they will look those men, women and families in the eye and explain themselves. Explain how they can claim publicly that they are supporting the steel industry whilst fighting tooth and nail behind closed doors against the lifting of the lesser duty rule and for market economy status for China. Explain how they can claim publicly that they're changing public procurement to maximise the use of British steel whilst allowing the MOD to build the latest flotilla of Royal Navy frigates with Swedish steel. I hope they will come to Aberavon and explain their breathtaking contrast between their words and their deeds. That's right. For the people of my constituency deserve an explanation. Madam Speaker, I'm certain that the British steel industry has a promising future if it is given the right support by government. The men and women of Port Talbot Works make the finest steel that money can buy, and they're breaking all production and efficiency records. But the industry requires a long-term industrial strategy based on a sustained, comprehensive approach to skills, investment, regulation, energy and industrial relations. That is why I'm proud to be co-chairing a working group of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Steel that will produce a report, Steel 2020, on formulating a long-term industrial strategy for British and Welsh steel. But our strategy for the future of the Welsh economy must not be limited exclusively to steel. We need, in fact, a new industrial revolution grounded in the new economy of renewables and connected technology, a fourth industrial revolution such as the one that was spoken of at the World Economic Forum's meeting recently in Davos. I see Wales at the forefront of this revolution. The Swansea Bay tidal lagoon could transform the energy industry, but frustratingly its future is under threat due to the government's perpetual flip-flopping. A positive decision on the lagoon would not only put a much-needed tick in the government's ever-diminishing green credentials, it would also deliver a massive boost to the local economy. And by committing to sourcing as much steel as possible from the UK, it would significantly help the UK steel industry.
That's right.
This project needs and deserves rapid advance. The government needs to get off the fence, and fast.
Absolutely right.
Madam Speaker, the government's short-sightedness is also undermining other forms of renewable energy, such as wind and solar. These are burgeoning industries in my constituency, with hundreds of jobs at stake, but they are under threat because of the government's moves to cut price stabilisation mechanisms, such as the feed-in tariffs. The government has been on a policy descent from hugger husky to, in the words of the Prime Minister, let's cut the green crap. Along the way, dozens of fast... I will give way.
I thank the honourable member, and I wondered whether I could touch on the hypocrisy I see in what he's saying, in the contradiction between supporting steel and Celsa, for example, Celsa steel using so much with their arc reactors of electricity, and the price put on that electricity for the renewable.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. As we've discussed earlier, it is clear that energy-intensive industries require support from government. That was recognised by the Chancellor in 2011. The support that has come, finally, is very welcome. The big question for me is how it could possibly have taken 5 years to make that happen, to get the state aid clearance that was required from the European Union. Fundamentally, the strategy for energy has to be around spreading the burden of the cost more effectively, so that our energy-intensive industries are not being hung out to dry by an energy policy that's simply not making sense. It is also about making a firm commitment so that those investing have a sense of the stability and sustainability of the market going forward. At the moment, we don't have any of those things in place, and that's why we're in the mess that we are. I will give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. He's making a very important point about stability. And does he agree with me that the real problem in areas like the solar and also anaerobic digestion, which held a reception in the House earlier this week, is the instability of the legislative and regulatory framework, which is a deterrent to long-term investment and is costing a lot of jobs in communities right across Wales?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I agree absolutely, and I think the Select Committee for Energy and Climate Change has just produced a compelling report which demonstrates clearly that we are losing investment, losing jobs, precisely because of the mixed messages and signals that this government is sending to investors. The business abhors a vacuum. Business needs stability. It needs to know whether its investments there will be a return on them in the future, and at the present time they see no evidence of that whatsoever in the United Kingdom. Madam Speaker, Wales and South West Wales in particular can also be at the forefront of an internet revolution. Swansea Bay City Region has based its City Deal proposal on the concept of an internet coast to drive the digital future of energy, health and economic acceleration. All eyes are now on the Chancellor. If he really wants a march of the makers, he must give his full backing to this exciting vision. The Swansea University Bay campus, which I would of course like to emphasise is located in my Aberavon constituency, has a huge role to play in the development of the internet coast, and I look there at my honourable friend from Swansea East for verification of that fact. This outstanding project, made possible by EU and European Investment Bank funding, is one of the largest and most important knowledge economy projects in Europe, producing cutting-edge research focusing on science and innovation. Madam Speaker, whilst the internet coast is a plan for the future, it is a pity the same cannot be said of the government's own draft Wales Bill, which does not provide anything like the lasting settlement that it was intended to create. Instead, it has thrown up more uncertainties around the legislative process and succeeds only in generating reams of constitutional red tape. Just this week, the Welsh Affairs Committee, under the chairmanship of the Honourable Member for Monmouthshire, called on the government to pause the proposed timetable on the bill so there is opportunity to fully reflect. That is the least that is needed. My specific concern is about ministerial consent and the risk that this process is seen as tantamount to an English veto. But my more general concern is that this bill has been drafted in a bubble, isolated from the broader debate about the constitutional reform that our country so desperately needs. Madam Speaker, the UK is more centralised than any other leading industrialised economy, and the Scottish referendum demonstrated that the constitutional foundations of the UK are cracking beneath our feet. The British people need and deserve better. The piecemeal, make-do and muddle-through approach that is epitomised by this Wales bill is simply not going to get the job done. We must therefore have a full constitutional convention that will formulate a bold, radical, rational, root and branch reform of our constitution. The convention would develop a written constitution that's anchored in a confederal UK, an elected Senate, a more proportional electoral system and properly defined devolution of powers to the nations and regions of the United Kingdom. We have also seen the results of government by muddle in Wales with the trade union bill. Having taken a sledgehammer to crack a nut, the government has found that the nut is not entirely theirs to crack in the first place. I'm delighted that my Labour colleagues have stood eyeball to eyeball with the government, and it was the government that blinked first. The trade union bill, coupled with the changes in voter registration and the alterations in constituency boundaries, are blatant and disgraceful attempts to turn the UK into a one-party state.
Yeah. That's right.
The thinly veiled agenda being to eradicate parliamentary opposition altogether. Madam Speaker, Vladimir Putin would be proud of such fixing.
He would.
Wales is disproportionately hit by the boundary changes, losing around a quarter of our MPs, reducing Wales's voice in the House and marginalising the Welsh people. Madam Speaker, there's great potential in Wales, but we will only realise that potential with bold leadership. There is vision and willingness in Cardiff Bay, but we find these qualities abysmally lacking on the benches opposite. And as we go into elections in May, we should remember that what we all have to be proud of in Wales. A Labour government delivering for working people, creating 50,000 apprenticeships, getting 15,000 young people back to work with Jobs Growth Wales, groundbreaking legislation on violence against women, a Labour government that has improved the cancer survival rate faster than anywhere in the UK and is training more nurses than ever before, and a Labour government that stood up to Westminster to protect farm workers' wages. A Labour government that stood by Remploy whilst the Tories were shutting it down across the rest of the UK. And let us remember it was the work of the Welsh Labour government under the leadership of First Minister Carwyn Jones which has enabled the creation of 750 jobs at Aston Martin in St Athan. And under Carwyn, Labour will make use of the Welsh Government's new powers by cutting business rates for small businesses, supporting entrepreneurship, growth and jobs in Wales. That is the kind of leadership we need in Wales, creating jobs, opportunity. I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way and also for the wonderful speech that he's making, and also for his really important leadership in the whole steel debate. He's been critical in moving that forward. Would he also talk a little bit about the importance of clarification of what is going to happen with the franchising of rail in Wales and whether or not, as suggested by the Department for Transport, no trains that start or end in Wales will be franchised in Wales? We have to know what is happening. Isn't that an important issue that we take forward?
I agree entirely. I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I agree entirely. I think this comes back to one of the things I was talking about earlier in my speech, which is the need for a long-term industrial strategy, which connects supply with demand, which gives our steel producers some certainty so that they know what sort of infrastructure projects are coming down the track. They can then configure their production processes to ensure that they're making the right kind of steel at the right time. That is about a partnership between government and business, and without such a partnership, industries such as the steel industry will continue to struggle. I do hope that today we'll hear a little bit more about the government's commitment to such a partnership. And that is the kind of leadership that we need in Wales, creating jobs, opportunity, industry and enterprise, standing up for all in our nation. That's the kind of leadership we need, the kind of leadership we can be proud of. And that's why it's vital that we see a Labour victory in Wales on May the 5th.
Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, Wales has the talent and the creativity to emulate our Celtic cousins, Scotland and Ireland, and gaining strong recognition in the world. Our people achieve far beyond the nation's size in rugby, football, athletics, etc. We can, with effort and fair chances, do the same politically, technologically, environmentally, culturally and economically. I'm proud to be Welsh, proud to be British and to be European. I'm certain that we can make these advances because, in all dimensions, together we are stronger.
The question is that this House has